He was not going to talk, so he did not talk. The next day, next morning, we're having breakfast. He won't talk. You can't get a word out. He's not going to talk. And he just, other than that, he's just Mike. He's just going through his
emotions.
So we get out there on Sunday morning. Lo and behold, we get lined up against Garlett's in one of his other cars, right?
In the sports car, right?
And Mike's still not a word. They push down, and this time nothing's going to go wrong on this one, at least as far as Mike's concerned. And everything's looking real rosy, except for it twists the pinion gear off on our car. So he is now in neutral about halfway down the track. And in the video, it shows you where the thing just stops and Garlett's motor's on by. Anyway, so that was the end of that. And I'd like to add a little technical note to this deal. We had the early Olds rear end that was the 49 to 52.
Yeah.
Right? 49 to 52 one. We used those parts. So you go to the junkyard, buy a center section out of a Oldsmobile with the right ratio that you wanted, and then you bring it home and put those parts in your magnesium housing, right? And which we were using at the time. And anyway, the 49 to 51 had a certain size spline, and that's where that was the weak link in our car. Every once in a while, we twist one of those off. And so years and years later, I was working on a recreation deal, taking all these rear end parts, and I had the ring and pinion out of 53 to 56. Is that the next model?
Yeah.
Yeah, 53 to 56. And had them side by side on the bench, and I'm looking at the 49 to 52, and the bigger 53 to 56 parts. And I'm going, you know what? Those parts will probably fit in this thing because it's smaller housing. So I had a little goofing around, and pretty soon I got everything in there, and I find out that Timken makes a tapered bearing that has the proper outside, proper inside that will fit in my housing and fit on these gears, right?
Wow.
And I'm thinking, God, I sure wish we had have known this, because that was a weak link in our act, right?
Yeah.
And then so I was asking around and asking other people, did you ever try using a different ring and pinion, the later ring and pinion? And they're, oh yeah. And the guys, especially the guys from the Midwest, they all go, you didn't know about that? I said, no, we didn't know about that.
So I guess in 1964, when you were observing, you didn't get to look quite close enough.
Well,
Anyway,
That's too bad.
So everybody else knew about it, and we didn't. And we were master spies.
yeah.
Figuring things out.
Right.
And somehow that one went right over our head. And anyway, that twisting off the pinion cost us numerous races over the years. I mean, no big deal, but it just struck me later that here was some fairly common knowledge and we didn't know it. And there wasn't very much we didn't latch on to
Right.
the way of knowledge.
And there hadn't been any coverage in the magazine on that either.
Apparently not, or we didn't read the magazine or something.
were going to race the Greek. The Greek had come out from Chicago, and so that would have been, now you just raced the Jet in a 2 out of 3 match race. Well, that's something that everybody got to do. But if you're going to race the Greek, Greer Black Upper Dome, somebody like that, you're to be reckoned with. They want you out there because it's going to put people in the stands. But it rained, and it rained 2 weeks in a row, and it never happened.
Never happened because
Never got to race the Greek.
the Greek had to go home.
Not too late. It's not too late.
Yeah, you can still do it if you want to.
He's
now.
still racing.
You're still racing. All you got to do is put a car together.
That is what, 86 or
Yeah, yeah, he is.
what a guy.
Yeah. It's in the mid 80s.
Don,
for
you're a part of the magazine side of things, the publications, and the surfers keep knocking at the door, and they have been for a while.
Sure.
What are your thoughts by this time, the beginning of '65?
We were pretty much dazzled by the fact that they were doing so well because they were essentially broke. And there were a lot of teams out there that had a little bit more money and some had a lot more money. And they weren't running as good. And we figured they knew something, but they didn't divulge anything. And Madden would, my partner, would go mess with Skinner occasionally and give him some really off-the-wall science that he'd thought about over and over. And Skinner would take it all in, and he'd go back to Job with it, and Job would, it'd take 2 weeks for him to clear his mind of all this stuff.
That's the absolute truth.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Don
That's beautiful.
Madden, he was the best. His real calling was science fiction. He should have written science fiction books.
Wow, okay.
Typical of many drag racers, he didn't have much in the way of education, but so it was even easier for him to not let physics and science get in the way of his theories. He could just make them up.
Right.
Then,
Did.
and then make the physics match, however it needed to match, whether it fit the world. Well,
Yeah, well.
we'll worry about that later.
Yeah.
But his ability to tell a convincing story was amazing.
Yeah.
It was only if you analyzed what he was saying as he was saying it and thought about it in terms of,
What?
well,
Yeah.
why does gravity pull on now?
Yeah, what?
Well, Bob Skinner loves a well-told story, and the more bizarre the story is, the more he likes it. Well, Don Madden had both the ingredients, well-told and bizarre. And so it would start, we'd be driving home from the drag races at night, or afternoon, whatever the situation was, and Bob Skinner would start in, I was talking to Madden today, and he told me about this, and we ought to think about bolting the engine in upside down.
Well, maybe not that far.
Yeah, but
Well, whatever this bizarre theory of the day was.
right.
And I mean, it would take 2 weeks for me to undo what Madden could do to him in a half hour. It was devastating. It was funny as hell. I mean, the whole thing was really a laugh, but Skinner was dead serious. And Madden said that if we blah, blah, blah,
Beautiful.
it was great.
Oh, that's
Madden
awesome.
was a wonderful guy.
Good
And
job.
Don's partner in numerous dragsters.
And his name is brought up here. That's good.
Yeah.
Good deal.
Great story.
Yeah.
Carry on, young man.
but you ran 2:02 and got the win. And then the very next day, you went to Pomona and got the runner-up. Now, we've talked about San Fernando, and we've talked about Fontana, and the problems you inherently had at Lyons due to the slippery, cold, wet surface. But we never talked about Pomona. You went to Pomona a few times, not a lot.
I would guess this was one of the Pomona. Pomona used to run 1 day a month on Sunday. Was it always a daytime because they never had lights? And it was run by the Pomona Valley Timing Association, PVTA. And they put on these once a month. They were small events. They were fun, real nice. You know, the same facility they run the Winter Nationals and the bigger events on.
And because it was Pomona, everybody turned out. In 1953, Pomona had a huge race that was put on cooperating between the PBTA and the San Diego Timing Association. And they had what was, at that point, a championship.
Huh?
Prior to that, they were all drag races. This one was a drag race championship. And that was the first race that Wally Parks got the NHRA involved in.
Okay.
And he slid in and claimed sanction to the event in cooperation with the AMA, Motorcycle Association, because they wanted records, and the records at that point were dictated by how the course was laid out. And the AMA demanded, if they were going to have AMA records, that the racetrack be 1/4 mile with speed traps 132 feet on one side. I'm sorry, 132 feet of traps, 66 on each side. And that set the tone, because prior to that there was a starting line and finish line, and that was it. And usually only single lane timing. Now we're talking about 1953. So when Crocker came up with the dual lane timing and all of that, that's what kind of prompted the championships, because they had accurate timing at that point. And NHRA sponsored what eventually became Top Eliminator. It was the fastest of lots of classes, run off at the end after all the classes had been decided, including what was Top Dragster at that point.
Right.
And the guy named Smith won the event by beating the Bean Bandits. And then they raced all these other cars again, and the Bean Bandits won that Top Eliminator. Parks had it, he was winning the race in Hot Rod magazine, and the guys who covered it for everything else had Smith winning it.
Oh.
So it was quite a dichotomy there. And everybody was concerned that Hot Rod was important in the drag racing business. So Parks wedged his way in at that particular event.
Hot Rod being Hot Rod Magazine.
Hot Rod magazine.
And Wally Parks was
He was the editor.
editor of Hot Rod Magazine.
Yeah.
And early on, where you're talking about 53 and later on into the 60s sometimes, if you see an old picture of Pomona drag strip, there's a pump house right at the finish line on the left-hand side. I don't know what year they were finally. It's this big barn that sat right on the drag strip almost, and I don't know when they removed it, but I don't know if anybody ever hit it.
Nobody ever hit it.
And they were going fast. I mean, dragsters were running fast, and nobody ever hit it.